Here we go. The doors are closing. The doors are closing, and they are closed. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Conversations in the Cloud. My name is Ore, and I'm excited to be joined by the amazing Alice Loxton. You are a historian, you're an author, all-round expert on London. Can I call you that? Yeah?
I'll take it.
To be fair, you're fairly knowledgeable about London, aren't you?
Well, I've done my bit.
You've done your bit, you've done your fair bit. So we do Conversations in the Cloud. I'm going to ask you about your book, some things about London, and hopefully, before we get to the other side of this journey, we can complete that conversation. Is that all good?
Wonderful.
Amazing. Simple question to start with, actually. Is this your first time on the cable car?
I've been once.
Yeah.
I have to say it was a bit of a dreary day.
Yeah.
Not like today, which is absolutely beautiful.
It's almost like when you said that, we ascend and the sun just appears in the sky and London is beautiful.
It is amazing.
I love it, I love it. So you are expert in all things London. What would you say is your favourite historical spot in London?
Okay, well, I say one that is where lots of history has happened is right in the centre near Trafalgar Square. There's a statue of Charles I just in front of Trafalgar Square, and beside that is a plaque on the floor. You can go and have a look at it yourself. And that is the point where all measurements to London are made. So if you're in, say, Oxford and you put in Google Maps, I want to go to London, that is the spot that it will take you to. So that is technically the centre of London.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, you know, it's in the heart of the city, I suppose. National Gallery, Westminster Abbey,
very
Buckingham
true.
Palace, you know.
I guess it's the heart of the country, so naturally it's a nice place. I always wonder, actually, because we are in Greenwich, and Greenwich Mean Time, I've always questioned, why is it specifically from Greenwich that time is measured?
Well, they have the oratory there, where there's a lot of time kind of systems going on.
Okay.
So that's probably something to do with it.
Ah, I never knew that. I never knew that.
Up on the hill, yeah.
Up on the hill. Okay, and if you could time travel, if time travel was a thing, and you could go back to any moment in London's history, where would you pick and why?
Well, one of the events that has really fascinated me over London's history are when, in the past, it could get incredibly cold in London. And some of the winters, the entire river would freeze over with ice so thick that they could have these amazing frost fairs. So they'd have all these attractions.
So like a little fun fair on ice?
It was a fun fair, yeah. And they'd have, it was so thick that they would have animals there, they'd have carts. They said there was a whole street crossing the river. And even apparently in one frost fair they had elephants. So, it was pretty
elephants
strong.
on ice, on the River Thames. I would love to see it in the modern day.
It's pretty wacky, yeah.
I'd love to see it in the modern day. Do you have any random facts about London that the average Londoner who walks the streets of London every day wouldn't know? Surely you've got something.
Okay, there is one thing that people love hearing, and it's this. That when you look at the design of a bollard, there's this particular history behind it. And what it is in the 18th century, when we were fighting in the Napoleonic Wars, they would seize ships and they'd capture the cannons from those ships. And sometimes they'd bring those cannons home and they would place them in the ground to act as kind of bollards and, celebrations of...
Oh, so wait, the bollards that we see today, that's taken from inspiration of a former cannon put into the ground?
But the thing is, in London, you can actually see some of the originals. So next to London Bridge, there's an original. Of course, many of the ones that we see today are not from that period.
Fancy and technological.
Yeah, but the design stays the same. So there's still those kind of black forms with the kind of the stripes around them, and the rounded top comes from the design of the cannonball. So, there's history everywhere.
I never knew that. And I guess when you live in a city like London, obviously if you're just living your life, you're not paying attention. But I guess history is just all around you, isn't it?
I mean, out of any city in the world, London is an amazing city.
It's so great, right?
History everywhere. Yeah.
It's so great. So we are actually celebrating 25 years of Transport for London.
Congratulations.
This is our 25th year.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to TFL. And transport has changed so much over the years in London. What are the old random kind of wacky ways we used to transport around London? Because we say this as we're sat comfortably above the River Thames on a cable car, but I'm pretty sure this wasn't here in the early 2000s.
Not quite.
Do you have any random wacky stories of how we used to get around in London?
Well, I suppose the big story of London's transport is that, London has been here since the Roman times, so there have been Roman roads coming in, Watling Street, Urban Street, and then the river has always played such an important role, bringing ships in and transporting goods all around the world. And then we've got the amazing train stations, these cathedrals of steam, they used to call them. They also built a tunnel under the river. But one of the interesting facts about London's transport history is that when you look at the bridges in London, they're all in the west. there's about 33 bridges, I think, in
Yeah.
the west of London. But in the east, there's almost none.
Why is that?
And the reason for this is because historically they'd have to this is how they bring ships into the city, right? So if you've got a mast or there's a big ship, it's hard you can't get them through with a bridge there. And so that's why...
Unless you've got a bridge that opens up.
Unless you've got a bridge that opens up, right? So that's why... And the other thing about this part of London is the river's much wider.
Okay.
So it's just harder to build a bridge. But that's why they built the tunnel, the Thames Tunnel. Go and see it. It's an amazing little museum. You can have a look around.
That makes perfect sense.
So that's quite a funny thing that people are always kind of intrigued by.
Oh, that's good to know. Well, we are over the River Thames. We are in the Docklands as well. This has a rich history. But all of these new builds and this fancy financial part of London, and the O2 wasn't always here. What was here before the O2? And I want to show my age here, and the Millennium Dome. A lot of our younger viewers may not know what the Millennium Dome is. But what was in this area before this amazing skyline that we have now?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's so hard to imagine looking out here and seeing it also built up. But it would have been kind of marshy countryside. It was only in 1855 that they built the Victoria Docks, and that was because there was so much trade, industry, goods coming in from around the world. And then it's obviously built up since then. It was also bombed during the war because it was such an important kind of hub of industry. So it's really a place where things have changed very quickly over quite a short period of time. I mean, you know, even here, Tate and Lyle, that's the sugar company. You know, you can see all these old companies that would have been here.
Do you know what? I'd love to talk about your book.
Oh, yeah.
You've released a book called 18.
Yes.
Could you tell us some amazing stories about some of the young people in this book that you've written?
Well, the book's all about people in history when they were 18 years old, some incredible young people. But one of the most interesting stories is about one of the figures who has a pretty remarkable teenage years.
Go on, hit me.
He had... By the time he was 18, he'd already been at sea in the Navy for 6 years. He'd been to the Caribbean, he'd been to the Arctic and fought polar bears. And then he went to the Indian Ocean and
all by the age of 18?
Caught malaria, survived that, and this was all before the age of 18, and came back to London. Do you have any idea who that might be?
I haven't got a clue.
That's all right, it's a tricky question. The answer is Horatio Nelson.
Ah, that makes sense. I didn't know that. I didn't actually know that.
And of course he is now in Trafalgar Square, and Trafalgar Square is named after his great victory, the Battle of Trafalgar. But of course when you look at his great success in later years and then you realise he's had this crazy teenage years fighting polar bears, well maybe that's been a good training for him.
Do you know what, now that I think about it, I was definitely not fighting polar bears by the time I was 18, wasn't travelling the world. But that's such a cool story. And I guess, what was the thing that inspired you to write that book?
Well, I guess in history, 18-year-olds past have been given a huge amount of responsibility, so much more so than we have today, or they're put in very difficult situations. But what I love reading about was the fact that these young people have achieved amazing things at the age of 18. And I think it's really testament to how brilliant young people can be, how talented they can be, and it's really just a celebration of that.
Love that. We are getting ever so slightly close to the end of the journey. So I want to ask you another question before we close. If you could take any historical figure in the entirety of London on a ride on the cable car, who would you pick and why?
I would either pick Oliver Cromwell, kind of controversial choice, who was the guy who, you know, killed King Charles I, started the Civil War. And I'd be like, because obviously the Civil War happened and then the end of it, Charles II comes back. I just want to ask him, like, look, was it worth it?
Have a frank conversation with him, just eye to eye.
It didn't work, like, would you go through it again? And if I couldn't ask him, I'd ask Brunel, who was the great engineer, and I'd just want to take him up here and be like, look how epic this engineering is. Yeah. Look at this cable car. Like, look at London and everything that you've built, or you know, the kind of the city that he knew. So yeah, those are
the two people that you'd like to take.
Yeah, maybe together. I mean, that maybe together.
I mean, hey, that could be quite the dinner party, or the conversation in the cloud.
That's it. Yeah.
Talking of conversations in the cloud, well, we've actually come to the end of our journey. I'm actually disappointed. There's so many more questions I wanted to ask you, but thank you so much
for
your time, Alice. I feel like this was not only a ride, but a history lesson.
Okay.
And appreciate it very, very much. And I guess we'll see you all on the next one. So thank you for joining us for another Conversations in the Cloud.
Bye.